Hey everyone, you're listening to the Fantasy Uptick. I'm Jeremiah Blue, and today we're going to be talking about the fantasy relevant players of the Minnesota Vikings. I was looking forward to doing the Minnesota Vikings because there's been a lot of change with the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, there's Stephon Diggs who went to Buffalo. That's a major player for fantasy purposes, but there's also a lot of players that just kind of are gone from the defense, like major players that have been on that defense forever. Griffin, Joseph, Waynes, Rhodes, Alexander. So the defense itself is going to be a different look as well. I'm not sure that I want to draft a defense like this, and I know a lot of the players, they're not necessarily just reaching over for the rookies to replace all these guys. There was players in place that were backups last year that are now going to be the starters, but it's a little bit too much change when we're talking about a team defense, and their schedule looks kind of rough this year as far as like a lot of good offenses are on that schedule. So the Vikings defense just right off the bat, I don't want anything to do with them. I think they're going to take a step back, even though I am confident Zimmer is going to put together a decent defense. They're going to be middle of the road somewhere, but they're typically that top 10 defense that you have every year and you can kind of lean on. Whereas this year, I think they're going to be more middle of the road. So don't reach for the Minnesota Vikings defense. The other things that we're going to obviously talk about are like the quarterbacks. So Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, and Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph. But before we get into that, we got to kind of know what else has changed offensively for this roster. So we really broke down that the defense, I feel like, is going to be just a little bit worse, which means the offense is going to kind of be put in a position where they're going to have to throw the ball just a little bit more. But they lost their offense coordinator. The offense coordinator, he went to go be the head coach of Cleveland, and now Greg Kubiak, who was already on staff last year, is essentially going to be the offense coordinator. So I'm assuming he's going to call plays. But basically, this offense is going to look very similar to the way it did last year because Greg Kubiak had a lot to do with what the offense was last year. So this is a team that really, really wants to run the football. So we take a look at the offensive line. That's basically reading between the lines what they want to do. They get guys like Bradbury, O'Neal, Cleveland they drafted this year. These are all quick guys who can get to the second level in the running game, but they're not the best in the passing game. They're better against speed rushers and all that stuff, but Minnesota is typically a team that struggles against the pass, or they have in the past. They were the number 19 offensive line according to Pro Football last season, but they were much better against the run than they were against the pass. So I expect that they're going to play around that zone running system that they had last year that Kubiak is so famous for. So my quick takeaways here are that last year, let's start with the quarterback, right? They only threw the ball 466 times, which was bottom 3 in the league. The only teams that were worse was Baltimore Ravens and Tennessee Titans, which obviously Derrick Henry's in Tennessee and Lamar Jackson is more of a runner than he is a passer at times, so he's Baltimore. So those teams are going to stay in that range. So really, when it comes to this team is kind of built to run the football because that's the way Mike Zimmer is wired. He wants to run the football, and that's what Kirk Cousins actually does best, the play action pass and managing the game. Kirk Cousins is a decent player. If there is a buy low guy here on this roster as far as like dynasty goes, it would be Kirk Cousins in my opinion, because if you think about it, he just signed an extension basically all guaranteed for the next 3 years, assuming he doesn't get hurt next season. So if next season he takes a big hit and it turns into the Alex Smith situation, they can move on from him the year after. But as of right now, chances are he doesn't get seriously injured. He gets all that money guaranteed for the next 3 years. So if you got a guy like Derek Carr, who there was talks that he would end up being replaced this season when Brady was coming out as a free agent, and if he has another bad year, because the last couple of years Derek Carr's been kind of fumbling around, or say a Gardner Minshew, who they're giving him an opportunity to be the starting quarterback this year, but it wouldn't be very hard for them to move off of Gardner Minshew. I personally think the Jags are tanking. I think they're going to be awful this year. Somebody's going to be drafting number 1, and typically when you draft number 1, you're going to end up getting a quarterback. So a guy like Gardner Minshew might be a time to move off of him and go get a guy like Cousins, that you know is going to be the starting quarterback for 3 years. And again, this is more for dynasty, 2 quarterback leagues where every quarterback's starting, right? But I can't imagine that Kirk Cousins is going to be repeating what they did last year. Remember, 466 is really, really low for pass attempts. So the year before that, he was 606. So somewhere in the middle, maybe like 520, somewhere in that range would be what I expect from him from a passing. So I expect him to throw the ball a little bit more. Like we talked about, the defense is going to be worse. They're probably going to be behind in a couple more games. I don't think they're going to be as good this next season as they were. That division is going to be really interesting because you got Chicago, who I think is going to be improved. Detroit, who I know is going to be improved because Stafford's back. And then you got Green Bay, who has been dominating that division, who, even though I don't think they did much in the offseason to improve, and through the draft, obviously, they got backups, Jordan Love and A.J. Dillon, who's really not going to do much. So after Kirk Cousins, we go to Dalvin Cook. Now, Dalvin Cook I loved. I was the biggest Dalvin Cook truther in 2019 going into the year. He was my favorite guy to have. I had him on so many teams because I just had him ranked way higher than everybody else. I had him as my 5th running back right behind Alvin Kamara. And I was drafting Dalvin Cook over Kamara last season just because of how much I liked him and how much I liked his schedule and everything like this. This year, I'm going to struggle because I still think Dalvin Cook's going to be great for your regular season. I think Dalvin Cook's going to have a solid regular season, and he's going to be Dalvin Cook. The offensive line, to me, has gotten better because I think they drafted Cleveland to play left tackle this year, which will allow Riley Reif to move inside to guard, which, again, is going to improve the offensive line from a running back perspective. And I do think Cleveland actually projects better against those pass rushers, just maybe not his first year. Obviously, he's a rookie. But Dalvin Cook, I think the running game's going to improve this year. The blocking's going to improve this year. And it was already a good blocking team last season. You got to remember, Irv Smith is now going to be more developed as a run blocker moving forward, because that is what a lot of the tight ends struggle with early on in their career, is the run blocking. And Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph both playing in those personnel, which they like to run those 2 receiver, 2 tight end set personnel a lot. So I think that they will be a better running team. Now, here's the problem that I have with Dalvin Cook. And I know this is going to be something that a lot of people aren't going to be talking about, but 14, 15, 16, that is the fantasy playoffs. They will be going up against Tampa, then Chicago, and then New Orleans. Tampa was the number 1 run defense in the league last season. Chicago was only number 9, but the year before, Chicago was number 1. And I think with the addition of Nick Foles, I think that offense is going to be a better, more efficient offense, and therefore fewer turnovers, fewer short fields. The Chicago defense will stay off the field a little bit more. They will be more rest. I think they can return back to that 2018 Chicago defense. And then New Orleans being number 4, but they were number 4, which is also great for 2019, and they were number 2 in 2018. So these are defenses that are consistently good. Yes, Tampa wasn't good in 2018, but that was before they brought in Todd Bowles, who really emphasizes taking away the run game from the other team, making teams one-dimensional. So I believe that Tampa's going to, once again, be in the top there. Chicago's going to be in the top, and New Orleans is going to be in the top 10 run defense. Even though, again, you can't project what teams are year to year, I feel comfortable saying that these 3 teams will probably be in the top 10 in run defense. Again, defenses that I don't want to necessarily start Dalvin Cook. And obviously, remember, he's going in the first round. This is going to be your first pick. You're not getting Dalvin Cook in the second round. So just because I'm saying I don't know that I will be drafting Dalvin Cook doesn't mean that I think he's going to be a bum. I think he's going to be good. He'll get you to your playoffs, but he's going to be going the same range as guys like Ezekiel Elliott, or in standard formats, Derrick Henry. That, I mean, if we're just talking running backs, like in a standard format based off playoff schedule and just regular season, I'm really thinking that as of today, I'm leaning Derrick Henry. Again, my running back rankings will come out closer to July, August. So I'm still looking into this, but this is just something to think about when you're looking at Dalvin Cook. Alexander Madison, great handcuff, probably the best handcuff in the league. I might be missing somebody in my brain, but Alexander Madison basically is going to come in and be the Dalvin Cook replacement if Dalvin Cook goes down, which we all know Dalvin Cook has a tendency to go down pretty regularly. I think Alexander Madison is a guy you definitely want to stash. Then we go to wide receiver. So last year, like I was saying, bottom 9 in yards, bottom 9 in attempts when it comes to passing. So there's not a lot to love here. If we look at Diggs, so I've talked about this with Jefferson before. With Jefferson, first of all, he didn't have success playing the X receiver in college. He played the slot. They don't run a lot of slot there in Minnesota. And a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, they already got a slot receiver. It's Adam Thielen. No, Adam Thielen plays the Z receiver. The Z receiver is going to be moving all over the field. in those power I formations, he will play inside when they're playing bunches on one side, which that is essentially like the slot. He plays off the line. So a lot of the things that make slot receivers good, that's what Adam Thielen does good. He's not necessarily the slot. Adam Thielen is the Z. The slot last year was Busy Johnson. So they brought in Tajay Sharp, but I'm assuming they want to put Jefferson at the X position, a position he did not have success in college. And it's almost striking me as one of these trying to put a square block into a round hole kind of thing. Like, oh, he's a good receiver. We're just going to make him good at this, which is what we need and how it fits our system. Now, he's fast enough, strong enough, and I might be totally wrong that he could actually work in that. I'm just saying he hasn't done it yet in college. So I've got red flags on Jefferson, especially in a offense that as of last year, and I said that they're going to pass a little bit more this year, I think. One because of the defense, one because it changed it, offensive coordinator, and it was just ridiculous. You can't count on a team finishing bottom 3 every single year in passes, and there was such a disparity from 2018 and 2019 that you would imagine it's going to be somewhere in the middle there, right? So there's going to be a few more opportunities there, but I think the loss of Diggs is going to result in guys like Irv Smith Jr., being more involved in the passing game. Kyle Rudolph isn't going anywhere. He's going to still be there for the red zone. He's still going to be there catching those red zone touchdowns. And again, they like to run a lot of 2 receiver sets, 2 receiver packages. They ran 2 receiver packages 53% of the time last season. So a lot of that is Irv Smith, Kyle Rudolph on the field at the same time. They are basically the guys who are playing the slot position. I think Irv Smith takes another step there because he's more athletic than Kyle Rudolph as the pass catcher this season. Maybe not the red zone guy because, again, Kyle Rudolph still has the trust of Kirk Cousins in the red zone. So that's something to think about. But I do like Irv Smith to be a guy, especially in dynasty leagues, it might be a guy you want to start trying to acquire from people that might have him. And then Adam Thielen, I love this year. I do. I think he's going to end up going about where he's supposed to, but I have him right inside my top 10 on receivers. I just think that without Diggs there, he's going to get a lot of the action. They're basically going to be drawing up plays to get him involved more, right? Now, Jefferson, a lot of people think Jefferson's going to come in and just take the Diggs spot. But Diggs last year, even with as good as Diggs is, first of all, Diggs is better than Jefferson. So if that's what you think is going to happen, you're wrong. Diggs is one of the best receivers in the NFL. The Bills knew that. That's why they traded a first-round pick for him. And he's already a veteran. Is Jefferson talented enough to eventually become as good as Diggs? Yeah, maybe. But not next year. Next year, he is not going to be better than Stephon Diggs is as a receiver. Now, stat line, who knows what Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, we'll talk about that at a different point. But we're talking about just talent alone. Stephon Diggs is a better wide receiver than Justin Jefferson is today. So if we just look at the stats from last year, the upside of Jefferson is essentially what Diggs was, but you got to take into account a lot of the more productive games that Diggs had was when Thielen was out. So I'm counting the 6 games that he was actually out and the 1 game that he played he only played the first quarter because he ended up going out in the first quarter due to injury. That's a 7th game where Thielen was out. And those 7 games, that's where he produced majority of his stat line during the 2019 season. Because again, there was nobody else but Diggs. Now, don't get me wrong, Justin Jefferson's going to be the number 2 receiver there. He's going to have a fine season. He's probably he's a very high floor guy. There is nobody on this roster who's going to take his job. He will see the field plenty, but don't expect him to just one for one replace Stephon Diggs. He's not that good. He's not as good as Stephon Diggs. Adam Thielen's his stock should really spike for redraft leagues. And then I think they're going to get Dalvin Cook and Irv Smith more involved this year. So they're the ones that are going to see a lot of that action that Diggs is kind of leaving off the table. So tell me what you think. That was my analysis on the Minnesota Vikings. That's it for today's show. I can't thank you guys enough, honestly. I love making videos. I love talking sports. I love talking football. Let me know what you think about my ideas for the Minnesota Vikings in the comments. Till next time, see ya.